Hello.
You can already write into the chat from where you are. That would be really nice. Welcome, Jason, from all over the world.
Great to be here.
Oh,
Wow.
from
Wonderful.
Colorado, in Germany, in
Stuttgart.
Brazil, in
Wow,
Syria.
Zurich,
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Brazil, London, Germany. Wow. Buenos Aires, Tel Aviv.
Hey.
Whoa, it's going really, 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 really fast. Israel, Gaza, New York, Zambia, Ashkelon.
Wow, this is fantastic. Incredible.
This is
Wow.
Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Hands were
Wow. So many places this person's from. It's like listing everything. Okay, Jerusalem, Antwerp. Wow. Okay, so we only have an hour with Jason, so we're gonna be super. We're gonna start because we have all these questions and we really want to get going. So I just want to introduce Jason Fried. He's a legend, pretty much, and I'm really nervous, you can tell. And he formed this company called 37 Signals about, I think, 20 years ago, right? And
Yeah, 22, yeah.
wow, in Chicago. And
Yes.
you were like a web design agency. And I guess through your work, you discovered that people needed this project management tool, and then you turned into Basecamp. At what year did you turn into Basecamp?
It was about 6 years ago we switched. I think roughly 6 years ago, yeah.
Into Basecamp, so.
Yes.
Okay. And then you've written at least 2 or 3 books, I think, about company culture and about innovation and about being bootstrapped and all that wonderful stuff. And also, if people here aren't signed up for his newsletter, I highly recommend it. It's just it's a real breath of fresh air to read your thoughts. Like when I wake up in the morning, I get up and then I get your thoughts. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
And okay, and then I'm Marie, and this is Rem. We're from
Hi,
Red
everybody.
ID, and also we organize the Design Sprint chapter in Israel. And Sabrina, do you want to introduce yourself?
You're muted. Yeah, that's the most common sentence in the last year.
Yes. Sorry. It's really loud because we have it's really loud outside. So I'm Sabrina, founder of the Design Sprint Studio, and here chapter lead of Stuttgart. Hello, everyone.
And Sabrina, do you want to tell people about the mural? Just so
Oh, yes. Thank you. So I have prepared something for you because we are not only here to listen to Jason and to learn from him, but it's always very nice to just connect with people. And I know you are used to that. And I want to share the mural like I think a lot of you already know that. So we prepared a free space there where you can connect, just put your LinkedIn there. And there's also some information about Jason, the books you have there, and also about Orit, Ram, and me. And if you want to capture some questions, you can put that there. And if you maybe also want to just note some observations, feel free to note them. That would be awesome to have some, let's say, observations later on. So I put that here into the chat in a second. Just a second. Okay. So find the mural link here and happy connecting, and let's start.
okay, so I'll start with the first question. Because, you know, we're based in Tel Aviv and it's like a big startup nation here and everyone has a startup. And your approach is pretty unique, you know, to creating a company. I mean, you created a company without really raising money. I don't think you plan to exit. You kept it under 50 people when everyone who's, successful startups here are like just hiring more and more and more people. And I'm asking this also because like it fits into like, how do you innovate at scale? You know, it affects it. Like, it affects everything. So like, what is your take on that? And did it change over the years? Because you've also created a new initiative, which is Hey. So, I mean, how is that?
Yeah, so we've stayed intentionally small because that's the kind of company we want to run. And I think the thing is everyone's got different ideas about what they want. So I can't tell anybody to do this or to do that. It's not my place. I can only say, like, do what works for you. But what I think is important to ask is always why. Why are you doing the thing that you're doing? Because companies tend to grow without thinking about it. They just keep growing and growing, and they think that that's just the thing you do. You just keep getting as big as you can, and that can work, but it also can lead to a lot of problems. You can have things can slow down. Oftentimes, people think you need to hire more people to get more stuff done, but you hire more people, and oftentimes you slow down because you have more infrastructure and more, and communication becomes more difficult and more structure, and everything just kind of grinds to a halt. So I think you got to be careful about that. But again, you got to figure out what you want. If you want to get big for some reason, why do you want to get big? If you want to grow, why do you want to grow? We want to grow slowly to stay in control of our growth and figure out what we want to do and do it our way and not get stuck in a place where we can't sustain anymore. Some companies want to grow really fast because they want to sell, and they're just looking for top line growth so they can get as big as they can and sell. Like, you got to know what you're doing. It's kind of the big lesson. And the thing I would impart to everybody is know why you're doing what you're doing. And if you aren't sure, you better figure it out, because otherwise you're going to end up in a place where you don't want to be. And the other thing I would say about business in general is that it only gets harder. It never gets easier. As you get successful, there's more competitors. As you hire more people, there's more personalities. As you take on more costs, you need to make more money to support those costs. If you raise a bunch of money, well, you have a lot more expectations. Everything just builds on itself, and it gets harder and harder and harder as you go. So just be aware of what you're layering on, is what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so your approach is still like the same as back then, or do you feel like with the raising money as well, or? Okay.
Yeah, roughly. I mean, our approach has always been to first of all, to build the kind of things that we want to see in the world, to keep the team as intentionally small as we can, and to not get ahead of ourselves, and always be profitable. So we've been profitable every year for 22 years, and that just allows us to sustain. We can stick around as long as we make more money than we spend. Like, and we like doing what we're doing, so that's number one. Is like, let's stick around so we can keep doing it. That's what this is about. Let's keep doing these things. So we only hire who we need to run what we want to run, and we say no to most of the things that we come up with and that even customers suggest, because there's always more ideas than you can do, and we don't want to chase everything. We're very, very careful about what we decide to do. But yeah, we have more people now than we've had 15 years ago, but it's still the same idea, which is like, grow slow, grow in control, just build what you need, just build what you want. Keep things as tight as you can, keep things as small as you can within reason. As we have more customers, we have over 120,000 paying companies who use Basecamp and people who use Basecamp. So we've had to grow our business in terms of customer service so we can support more customers. But our product team's still relatively small, our operations team's still relatively small. So we kind of keep that as tight as we can. It also just keeps us honest. That's the other thing. Keeps us honest. We don't get ourselves into spots where we can't do something because we have too much ambition and we don't have the people. So
I wonder if you had like this vision of how success will look like. Does it look like now?
No idea. I still don't know. I mean, actually, I do. I guess I do know to me, success is simply, would I want to do that again? That's how I would define success. Like, would I want to do that again? If the answer is yes, then it was successful. That's it. But when I started the business, I've never had a long-term vision of the business other than to stay in business. I didn't know where things were going to end up. I had no grand plan. We still don't have a grand plan. We still don't have plans. We plan every 6 weeks roughly, and that's it. And we just take it as it comes, and we figure out as we go. And again, as long as we still want to keep doing what we're doing, then it's successful. I mean, if we were hemorrhaging money and business was terrible, I probably would not say I want to do that again. But as long as the answer is yes, then things are going for the most part well enough that we want to keep doing it.
I'm going to record this and let you hear it every morning. We're 16 years together, so
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, that's great.
yeah,
That's incredible. That's
it is.
incredible.
Sabrina, do you want to go ahead with the second subject of the?
Yeah.
So let's say a big part here is from the design sprint community, and you have another approach. So you are not using design sprint, but it's really interesting for us to learn from you, and we would like to know what is your approach. So when you just look into the discovery phase from the product design, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we have a slightly different approach. And by the way, it's not that ours is better or worse. It's just different, right? It all depends, right? So our approach is to, we've always tried to start with a single direction and iterate from there rather than exploring a bunch of different directions. And we typically start with just using paper. We'll just sketch some stuff really roughly. And then we'll start building it in HTML or CSS, if we're building a web thing. And we'll just go from there and we don't set a time. We don't say like, we're going to have a bunch of different directions within a certain number of time or days, or we're not going to look at things together or look at different variations. We just like start somewhere, we go somewhere, we iterate somewhere, we use the thing that we're building and we build it as we go. And it's a different approach than the traditional design sprint approach, but it's still similar in that, we kind of do move quickly through design. And the thing is that what we tend not to do is we don't ever throw anything away, because we are building from one perspective and iterating as we go. The work that we're doing stays with us because we are building something that ultimately ends up being the final thing, versus putting together a bunch of things that we don't end up following, those directions. So that's one of the differences. I think the other one is that we are building the thing that we're going to be using or that we're going to be making, and we begin hooking it up 24 hours in. Like within the first week, we actually have a working prototype that works with a programmer that's hooked up to the back end. That's actually something that's functional that we can evaluate, versus just looking at designs that they may be prototypes, but they're not actually functional. So within a week, we have something that works, and we can evaluate it that way. So that's a little bit of a different approach. We also, as far as discovery goes, we always, before we begin building anything, we already know what we're going to build. So we've already done that work ahead of time. That's what we call shaping. So in our world, we shape an idea prior to deciding to do the idea. And the shaping process can be anywhere from a few days to it could be months. It just depends on what the idea is and how well it's flowing. But before we decide to take on the work and actually schedule the work itself, we already have a good 90 to 95% idea of roughly what we're setting out to do. And then once we actually begin building the thing on day one, versus still trying to figure out what it's going to do or what it's going to be.
How does the shape look like? So you're shaping something. So how does it look like? So you align and communicate it on.
It's basically a document, like a page or two of writing with maybe a few sketches. And it's basically a rough outline of an idea. So I'll give you an example. So Hey World. So Hey is our email product, HEY.com. And we launched a feature a handful of months ago called Hey World. And Hey World is a way to write a public blog via email. Now, this idea could go in a million different directions. It could be like, well, are we building WordPress? Are we building Squarespace? Are we building Medium? Like, what is this publishing platform? But what I ultimately presented was like 3 paragraphs and a rough sketch. And it set the tone well enough for the team to think, for everyone to understand where we were going with this. But we didn't detail out every piece of design or every interface. We didn't know what that was going to ultimately look like yet. But once the team got started, they knew that we were going to be publishing public blog posts. And the way to do it was simply to email world@hey.com. So we already knew that you can already write an email. So you just need to write it to a different address, and that would publish it to the web. So we knew we had to come up with what does the public page look like? Is there an interface internally that lists all the different public posts you've already posted? How do you get back to one and edit it? Because you can't edit an email after you've sent it, but you can edit a post. So there's a few unknowns but roughly the idea was very clear in a few paragraphs with a sketch or two. We don't write specs or briefs that are extremely detailed. We want our teams to actually be able to use their own mind and figure out how to do this and where to go with it. But the direction is clear. Like, it's very clear where we're pointing and what we're aiming for. But how we get there is up to the teams themselves. I'd be happy to see if I could, after this, like, share a document with you that would show you what that looks like.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's very simple, very simple.
But
and what do you do with research? So how is research involved in the whole cycle?
Yeah, we don't do traditional customer research. What we do is we have customers, and they are endlessly telling us things. Like, they're giving us, they're telling customer service things. We're getting thousands on every given day, we get about 550 emails to customer service. Some are questions, some are like pre-sales questions, some are I'm confused, some are this is broken, but we get a lot of feedback in. So we have a pretty good sense of like what's right, what's wrong, what people want, but also we know what we want. And for example, Hey World, which is a huge successful feature in Hey, was never asked for by anybody. Like, we just had an intuition that we wanted to make something like that. The screener, which is part of Hey, which lets you say yes or no to people who email you, so you can keep people out of your inbox that you never want to hear from. No one ever asked for that. That was our idea. But then, you launch a product and people start to give you feedback on the product. And then we start to iterate based on what people are asking for, what they're thinking. But what we don't do is we don't do exactly what people want. What we do is we try to understand what they're trying to achieve. So customers will tell you something, but they're only going to tell you it the way they know how to tell you. And what I'm trying to get at is the deeper intention. Like, what are they struggling with? What progress are they trying to make? And you try to figure that out. Sometimes you talk to them. Sometimes you can figure it out. But this isn't about like, this customer asked for these things, let's do those things exactly as they asked for. It's like, what are they trying to actually achieve here? And you sometimes put together a bunch of different feedback from a bunch of different people to put together a picture of what you think they want. And then we end up building it. So another thing that's different about us is that I don't believe in validating ideas that are like, I don't believe you can validate anything. I don't believe you can show a customer something that's halfway built and get valuable feedback, to be honest. This is a different perspective than many, but I think the only way to know for sure is to listen, to absorb, to use your own intuition, to build, to release for real, and let people use it in a real environment, in their real day-to-day lives, and then they'll tell you what they really think. Before that, they're guessing. And I don't want to base my features on guesses. I want to base my product on as real information as I possibly can.
Sounds like you would do a job to be done. You would use that?
Yes, we use jobs to be done technique, an interview technique, not when building a new product, but after a product is out for a while, we'll talk to people who've been using it or who've left it or who just signed up for it and begin to learn like why, like, why did you leave, or why did you come, or where did you come from, or what's your day like, and what's wrong with email, or whatever it might be. It's a great technique, but it's not the only technique. We believe we trust our gut, and I think more people should trust their gut more frequently, especially if it's very well developed. If you've been doing this for a while, you should trust yourself. You should have confidence in your own abilities as well. So that's kind of where we land. And then the last thing about that is that if we're wrong, we can change it. It's like, because we don't work on anything that takes more than 6 weeks at a time, max. If we make a mistake, it's not like we're putting a year into something and then we go, oh my God, we totally screwed up. It's like, no, 6 weeks, we could fix some minor tweaks that we screwed up on in the next week or so. It's not a big deal. So that's how we tend to do things.
We have a question from Ryan, from AJ. He asked, like, how many of these requests, like these needs, bunch up to a major revision, like for it to be kicked out, like redo of Basecamp 4 or something like that?
Yeah, there's no numbers. We don't track that. We don't track things that way. This is not about how many requests come in or how many things pile up. It's not about that. It's more about an intuition and a feel. For example, with Basecamp 4, which is what we're working on right now, that is full of brand new ideas that no one's ever asked for. But we've felt that people would like Basecamp to do. Like they didn't, like one of the, I can't tell you what we're building right now, but there's like a new tool that we're building, for example, in Basecamp that no one's asked for specifically, but we understand the problems people have. And so it's, you can't look at requests and a big pile of requests and go, a lot of people are asking for this, so let's do this, because it might actually be that's a better solution. This is just about being aware and understanding what people are wanting and what's going on, but you don't take it word for word. You figure out how you want to solve the problem. But yeah, for example, Basecamp 4, we do a major revision of Basecamp every 4 to 6 years. Because we have new ideas and we think it's just time, and we want to challenge ourselves as well. But it's not a matter of requests. Yeah, there are things though, for example, that like, I'll give you one specific example. In Hey, we launched Hey without email signatures, because and email signatures are part of like every email service basically. But I've always been annoyed by them because like you get a short email and the signature is like this long, and it's like, a bunch of legal speak, and it's like, and there's like social media icons everywhere. It's just like, it's so, and you get them every time someone replies to you. It's just like too much. So we're like, let's change the game. Let's leave signatures out of this. And then, so we did that for a few months. And then we started hearing some different specific use cases where people weren't using their signatures for that, but they're using it for something else. And we heard about that enough, and it changed our mind because it was a perspective we hadn't considered. And then it became interesting. But before that, people were just like, I want signatures, I want signatures, I want signatures. And you're like, why? Well, because I have one. I've always had one. And that's not enough of a reason for us. Mm-hmm. Because pretty soon, if you just do what everyone's already used to, you end up rebuilding Gmail. And like, that's not the point of Hey. Hey is an entirely different take. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get to a place where I understood this problem or this suggestion from a different perspective in order to go, oh, what's the Hey way of doing that? So that's kind of an example of, there were a number of requests for it, but we took it in our own direction, and did it in our own way.
I think that like in the design sprint, when you do show like a fake prototype, high fidelity prototype to people, it's not always just about validating ideas. It's also, I call it like a conversation piece. It's almost like a catalyst for if I would have showed them like that email without the signature, maybe that would have come up then, and then you would have known what their real problem is. So it's not always about validating the ideas. So totally. Do you ever do like do you ever talk to them about, I mean, is it always just, how do you know how they work? Like, how do you know what their problems are? It's just, how do you talk to them?
Well, I never ever show a customer unfinished, or I never show anything while it's being built, because they can't use it. I don't believe in high fidelity mockups, because we don't use software as pictures. Mm-hmm. We use products to do something that we need done. We want to make progress. And I think that when people are using something for real in their real jobs, their real life, that's when it really matters. That's when they really know if this works or doesn't work. That's when they really know what they really want. I think when you ask people questions and ask them to look at something that doesn't, it's a sort of an artificial simulation of something, you can get some insights. There's no question about it. I'm not like suggesting that there's no insights to get. They're just not the insights that I want. I want to understand the problem well enough to decide to do it, build the thing, and then give it to customers for real. And then if we really screwed up, we tweak it. But if we don't have enough confidence in our ability to understand what people want without feeling like we need them to tell us spot on, then I don't think we're really doing our job as product designers. I think we need to really understand what we're building. We need to have a sense of perspective and a point of view about the thing that we're making that we're confident in. We can get it wrong, of course, but what's the cost of trying to get it right every time? Well, if it's like extensive interviews and a long drawn out process, then like there's a lot of work that may not even be necessary. It's sort of my perspective. I'd rather shorten the time frames. I'd rather get more things out there. I'd rather trust our intuition and understand where we're coming from, and then have to fix some things here and there that we got wrong, rather than try to tell ourselves that we're always going to be right if we do enough research, if we ask enough people. I just don't believe that that's often true. And you can tell because there's a lot of products out there that aren't very good, that are researched to death. It's not, you've got, there's more to it than just knowing the answers that people give you. There's an intuitive sense about proportion and spacing and timing and what parts matter. And I think if you try to like create this aggregate matrix version of a feature because you're combining dozens of different answers to something, you don't have a point of view on it anymore. And then I think it gets watered down. So anyway, I know I'm kind of rambling a bit here, but it is the reason I'm kind of rambling is because it's kind of hard to just tell you, like, you just got to make your best guess after understanding the problem and hearing from people. How do you hear from people, you ask me? Like, they tell you. The best way to hear from somebody is to charge someone for a product.
Yeah,
you put a price on something, everyone gives you feedback. We have more feedback than we can handle. And it's true feedback because people pay for this stuff. And it's when you pay for it, you really want it to be good. So they tell you. So we've never had a hard time hearing from people.
Okay.
Awesome.
I think that you wanted to ask the remote question.
Yeah, well, now that everybody is remote, like it's like been a decade since you were writing about remote, and everybody was like, yeah, but we have to work in person. So now everybody is remote and everybody thinking about, well, coming out of this pandemic, what will happen? Will we get back? And there are different views about it. I was wondering if you have any second thoughts, or you think that now it's going to be how it's going to be.
Hang on, I'm just putting something in the chat for people because I see some similar questions.
Great.
So we wrote a book about our entire process called Shape Up. It's at basecamp.com/shapeup. It talks all about how you shape work, how we work in 6-week cycles, how we decide what to do and what not to do. We address all these questions about user research and testing and shipping, and it's extensive, it's detailed, and it is exactly what we do, and it's free. So I'd recommend checking that book out. You can buy a paperback copy too, but it's free on the web, also as a PDF. We don't even ask for your email address. You can just do it. So if you really want to get into that, that's where all those answers are. So remote work. We've been working remotely for 20 plus years. Obviously over the last year, a lot of people have been forced into remote work. And what's tricky about the last year is that it wasn't really remote work. It was pandemic work, which is an entirely different kind of work, which is high stress because you're maybe stuck at home. Maybe your whole family is at home if you have a family at home. Maybe your home wasn't like where you have space to work. Not everyone has an extra room or anything. Plus the fact that people are sick and people are dying. It's stressful, as stressful as you can imagine. And in a normal year working remotely, you might be able to go out to a coffee shop and work from there for a bit, or go to the library or work from there for a bit, or go get lunch somewhere. And over the past year, it's just been a mess, right? So I think people who didn't like working remotely over the last year, I know a lot of people did, but people who didn't, that wasn't really remote work. And I think it's worth giving it another shot. The advantage for the company is that you get to hire the best people you can find anywhere in the world. And there are wonderful people everywhere. Our industry seems to think that the only good people in the world live in San Francisco, and that's obscene. It's obscene. There's great people everywhere. We have people all over the United States. We have people all over Canada, all over Europe. We have people in Hong Kong and some in Australia as well. We have people all over the place. There are great people everywhere. I'm currently we just hired actually our new iOS developer lives in Mexico. People are everywhere. They're great. They're great people everywhere. So remote lets you hire those people and find those people. And then for employees, it's great because you can set your own space up the way you want. You can work from anywhere. You can move. Maybe your partner, if you're married or in a relationship and they have to go somewhere else because their job can't work remotely and you have to move cities. Well, you don't have to lose your job to be with them. It's wonderfully flexible. There are some downsides, obviously. It's sometimes it can be isolating. At times, you lose a bit of the humanity. You know, like you start looking at each other sometimes as resources versus human beings, soft-bodied, you know, organisms that have feelings and emotions and all those things, and laugh and cry and all that stuff. So it's sometimes when you're just looking at each other through a digital medium, you kind of forget there's a human there. So that's hard. What we've done historically, which I think I'd recommend to everybody who's working remotely now that the pandemic is beginning to ease, obviously not everywhere, but a lot of places, Israel specifically, the US been pretty good, and New Zealand's been amazing, obviously, doing meetups. We do these meetups twice a year where we get together for 1 week. We fly everybody in the entire company into one city, and we just hang out socially twice a year for a week. We have meals together, we hang out together, we go see shows together, people go on walks together. That's necessary. And we didn't have that over the past year, and I think we suffered because of it. So I'd really recommend getting together when you can, at least a couple times a year.
Mm.
Okay. You want to ask?
No, go ahead. I guess there's also in the chat, how you said that you don't really have a strategy, but do you have any kind of like, do you set any goals or anything like that? Do you have any kind of structure like that? And also, like, back to the question before that, do you think that you can only work the way you work if you have a small product team, like under 50 people? Like, you know, is that like something that people who work in larger companies, what can they take from that? Because maybe that's part of the deal. So
yeah, I think I mean, our product teams, where our company is bigger, but our product teams, there's usually just 2 people working on a feature, 1 designer, 1 programmer. That's it. And so it doesn't matter how big or small your company is. I still think working in small teams is the most effective way to work. Now, what happens is when you have a bigger company, teams tend to get bigger. You have more roles and more people involved, and it slows things down. It becomes harder, no question about it. Now, of course, also, like, let's keep in mind, like, we're building software. I'm not building an airplane. I'm not building, you know, like mission critical, you know, medical equipment. You know, like, there's different degrees of criticality here. But for most people who are building software for you know, business software or you know, 2 or 3 person product feature teams are plenty, in my opinion. And what's great about it is that we can work on 3 or 4 different features in parallel. So if we have a small team of let's call it 6 programmers, or sorry, 6 designers, let's say 12 programmers, that's 18 people. We can work, like, you know, we can do 5 or 6 different projects at once at the same time, because we can split them up into teams of 2. This doesn't always equate. Some people are doing other things, but we can make a lot of progress in parallel with small teams because they're working on different things. So that's kind of how we do it. I think so. A big company is still made up of teams. It's still made up of groups. And I would still advocate for smaller groups so you can do more things and cover more area with smaller teams that are working in parallel concurrently.
How do you handle dependencies?
Try to get rid of as many as we can. So for example, at Basecamp, anyone can ship Basecamp. So you're working on a new feature. First of all, everybody at Basecamp has the full code base running locally on their laptop. Everyone can check out the code from Git, whatever it is. Everyone can make a tweak, and everyone can deploy, basically. So we don't like line up things that, you know, someone else has. There's code reviews and that kind of stuff, but basically, like, anyone can deploy who's on the product teams. And so we don't have this bottleneck. What you want to avoid are bottlenecks where things pile up and there's only one person who can pull the, you know, hit the button, or 2 people who can hit the button, or a team that can hit the button, because they're backed up waiting for other people. You got to figure out ways to slide by each other rather than grind the gears. So we're very much about creating independent teams within the organization that can do their own work, that don't need to depend necessarily on other teams to get their work out. They can ask for help. We ask for advice from each other, or very collaborative in that way. But every team is independent in the way that they can do everything they need to do on their own.
It sounds like a huge empowerment system. Like,
yeah.
you really, really empowered. So that leads me to like, you need the right people to empower. It's really, really difficult to do that. I just read something you wrote about, like, raising people to their potential, not just like hiring designers, not because of their current work, but what we see in them.
Yeah.
So, and are you going to empower somebody or in the middle of training or sees her potential? Like, how does
Yeah,
that?
I mean, here's how we think about it. We wrote about this in our last book. It doesn't have to be crazy at work was the name of the book. It's called the trust battery. And this is not our idea. This idea, I think, came from Toby, who runs Shopify. I think it's his idea, but it may have come from someone else. The idea is that when we hire everybody, they start out with what we call a 50% charged trust battery. Everyone's just like, we don't really know you that well. We trust you, but we don't know you that well. So 50% is a good place. And as you do more work here and as you build more things and as you work with other people, you begin to build up your trust battery where we trust you more and other people trust you more. And everyone has a different trust battery with each other. If you have a bunch of good experience with someone else, they trust you more than if someone else maybe you didn't have a great experience with. So there's a bunch of different trust batteries, but organizationally, and this is not tracked anywhere. There's no like trust battery spreadsheet. It's a feeling. It's like we've worked together for a while. You've done some great work. You've done what you said you're going to do, and you begin to trust more. This is how you trust people in life. You don't keep track of people on a spreadsheet either. How well do you trust your neighbor? Well, have some interactions with your neighbor, and I trust them. I'm going to give them a key to my house now. Mm-hmm. Not the first day I move in, but maybe a few months later, we have a few meals together. Whatever. Trust is earned. It's built. It's art. It's more art than science. But at a certain point, after someone's been here for a while, and also the other thing is, someone who's brand new is not going to they're not even going to feel confident enough to go deploy Basecamp. That's not something they would do. So they also trust themselves not to do what they know they shouldn't do. So our default stance is build up the trust over time, give trust. Don't assume people are going to do the wrong thing. So don't prevent them from doing things, but remind them what their expectations are at this stage. So when someone's brand new, the expectations that they're paired up with someone who's been here for a while. They're not doing their own projects by themselves yet. They're working with someone else. They get to kind of observe. They're more like apprentices and observing. And this, a few months in, they get the hang of it. And then everyone just kind of knows. And usually when someone deploys their first thing, there's kind of a little bit of a celebration, like it worked, congratulations, this is your first feature, that kind of thing. So there's that, but it takes a while to build up to that. And it's different for everybody. Some people come in very experienced. Some people come in more junior, and you just, you get a sense. You get a sense.
How are you involved in the hiring process? Are you personally hiring everybody or
Not anymore. I hire on the design side. I hire designers currently, but it used to be that David's my business partner. We would when we were smaller, we would hire everybody together. But now different teams hire their own people. So the customer support team hires their own support people, and design hires design. I run that, so I hire there. Programmers hire programmers. So the idea is the people who really know the work best do the hiring for that particular role. So we don't have a general HR staff that does the hiring. We have someone who reviews candidates initially to make sure they're basically qualified, but then the teams do all the work from that point on.
And do you kind of train them as to see the potential of the person or the personality of because it's not only a professionalism thing, it's also a personality.
Totally.
And what do
hiring is one of the most, I think, rewarding things to do. It's really fun. And every person you hire changes your business. Every single person you hire changes the company. True. And I think I should say if it's good or bad hires, change the company. And so I always think when I'm hiring someone, how will this person change the company, or change the team they're on specifically? And sometimes, we're interviewing designers right now. We've got 6 finalists right now that we're looking at, 6 or 7 finalists, and they're all very, very, very different. And some are I would consider them to be wild cards. They're not visual. Let's say there's some people who are visually better as a visual designer, clearly, but this other person might have just an interesting spirit about them where they're going to bring a quirky perspective that we don't have, that I feel we could use, And so I might value that a little bit more this hiring round than perhaps solid visual chops or something. You know, it just kind of depends on what we need at the time, what the team makeup is like, where we think we want to go as a company. You know, it's not the resume. It's not where you've been. It's not what you've done. It's what can we do together? What can we give to you? What can you give to us that we don't have? And it's also about timing. So it just matters, like, what do we need now? What's, you know, that's that kind of feel. So like right now, as we embark on Basecamp 4, I'm really looking for people who have just kind of unusual perspectives, because Basecamp 4 has some new ideas in it that we've never done before. And I don't want us just falling back on what we're used to. I want someone to kind of come in and, you know, kind of suggest things that are a little bit off the wall, kind of. But I'm also not just hiring for the product that we're building now, because this person might be, hopefully will be with us for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, you know. But I do think about the team, and who are we hiring into the team, and how's that going to change that? So you know, a lot of it still is gut feel, it's intuition. It's just like, it's like making a new friend. I mean, you know, how do you make a friend? Like, you just get a feel for somebody. You go, I can trust this person. I like this person. I like being around this person. I like what they add to my life. I like what they must like what I add to their life. And it's more like that than it is like matching up certain. Of course, you got to be able to do the work, obviously, but beyond that, it's like, do we want to work with this person? Can we work with this person? It's those kinds of questions.
It's kind of chaotic, is it? Like, it's, you don't know really. It's like, I have a hunch about it. And
You have no idea.
no rules.
Yeah.
No rules. There was a great podcast from Malcolm Gladwell. He described how he hires. And he's like, he met his accountant on the street signing his book.
Yes. I love that. I mean, like, ideally, it's funny actually. So we're thinking about doing like a video, like a commercial, sort of like a video, you know, commercial video. And I reached out to an old friend of mine who I've known for 25 years, maybe longer than that, who I interviewed for my first job out of college. He didn't hire me, but we've stayed in touch for 25 years. And now I think he's the right person maybe to direct this video. So you just never know. You never know where things are going to go.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun that way.
Okay, we'll have a few Q&As now, okay?
Yeah.
We have like
Sabrina, is that okay, or did you want to say something?
Yeah, I see a nice question from our friend Steph.
Steph.
Yeah.
Hi, Steph.
He's on my list, but okay, go ahead.
Can you tell us about a product, a team that made you jealous lately, about how good they are?
That's a really great question. This is not in the software realm, but I recently bought a Leica Q2 camera. And it just blows me away how good it is everywhere. German, there we go, German camera.
Yeah.
I mean, Leica's great, obviously, but the Q2 as a product is so tight. Like the hardware, the software, the simplicity of it, the quality of it, the weight of it, the feel of it, the touch of it, the switches of, like, it's so well conceived and so high quality that I can't see a compromise in it. Now, I'm sure that there's like the team would be like, oh my God, you have no idea. We tried to do this and that, we couldn't, you know, but as a customer, I can't see the compromise in it. It looks like they got to do everything they wanted to do. And I know they didn't, because it never works out that way, but that's the kind of feeling I like to see when I use a product. I'm like, that is just so good. Another German company, Porsche. Porsche, the Taycan, so their electric car is so good and so well conceived, and everything about it is just so special, that it's another one of those things. I'm like, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they did it. It's like, those are the kinds of things I love to see and love to use. It's like, I don't know how did that happen? It's so good. So, and there's small things too, but those two products specifically, and they both happen to be German, are just awesome.
It's about
Hey,
that.
Jason, if you want to have a connection to Porsche, just let me know.
I do. I do.
It's
I'm a fan.
like the software industry always looks at the hardware. It's such a higher realm of like, you can't iterate so fast and do mistakes. So it's like you ship. It's
got to be right. Yeah, it's got to be really good and durable. And like the thing that's so cool about cameras is like cameras get thrown around in a bag, or they might get water splashed on them. They might have sand. Like it's just this thing just feels like a solid brick of quality. And I'm jealous of that. I'm jealous of that degree of execution.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. Really, really, really good. So there's an example.
Okay.
And by the way, just another quick thing. I tend not to look at my own industry for inspiration. There's wonderful products, of course, in the software world, but I'd rather look at architecture or car design or camera design, because I think what happens is the industry tends to look at itself too much. And you see a lot of Me Too products. You see like products that look like everyone else's products or behave like everyone else's products. If you do a lot of competitive analysis, like we don't look at our competitors. I don't like to do competitive analysis, because you end up, when you see something else that someone else has done, it lodges itself in your brain, and it's hard not to do what everyone else is doing, compare yourself against everybody else. And you end up feeling like you have to do what they're doing plus something else versus just doing something different. Mm-hmm. And so like with Hey, anyone here who's used hey.com, HEY.com will know that it is unlike any other email system that's ever been made. It's just different. It's different in 25 ways. And I didn't look at what Gmail is doing, what Superhuman's doing, what Proton Mail is doing, I know these products and they're all good, but I don't want to look at them. I want to look at ours. I want to do our idea. And I think that this is, again, about just betting on yourself. And I think I know what to do here. I mean, maybe we don't. The market will tell us. Mm-hmm. But I feel like we can all get caught up on what everyone else is doing, and then you begin chasing everyone else's tail, and you don't really build anything new and interesting. And then you don't really need to exist if you're just kind of like everyone else, but like a little bit different. I don't think it's enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So from Guy, can you give us an example of things that didn't work or failed for you?
I mean, I could look at entire products and go like Backpack, which was a product, our second major product that came out in 2005. It never really took off, but I'm really proud of the product. So I don't feel like it failed, but like it failed in the market, but I think it was great. So I'm proud of the work we did. I'm proud of the ideas we did. I don't look at things as failures if they don't work. I look at them as moments in time and like, okay, that didn't work as well as we maybe thought it was going to work. That's okay. And we just move forward. So I'm not big into analyzing things after the fact, actually. So for example, I saw a question much higher up in the transcript. I'm going to get it wrong, but I think it was something like, how do you know if something works, or how do you know if something didn't work after you released it? It's anecdotal. Like we don't measure. We don't instrument features. Like we don't like launch a feature and instrument and go 22% of the people use it. We wish it was 28. Like I don't look at things like that. We either hear about it from customers directly when they email support, or we don't hear about it. And not hearing about it doesn't mean it wasn't good. It might mean it was amazing, but people don't necessarily write in saying that was amazing. Some people do. You just know if you're paying attention. You know what works. You know what doesn't. And of course, if things are like literally broken, then of course you know immediately. Like you get notifications that things are broken. So we're not shipping bad software. We're shipping quality stuff. But sometimes things don't quite hit the mark. And you know if you're paying attention. This is one of the hard things, though, about doing client work. So if you're building something for somebody else, and by the way, this is where design sprints, I think, make a lot of sense. If you're doing work for clients, for example, and they want to see some variety and see some ideas, and totally makes sense. But when you're doing something for someone else and you hand it off, and then you're disconnected from the result, I could see why you would think that you'd want to get more stuff right up front. I'm just not convinced that you actually can, is sort of my point. I think there's a lot of work you can do that doesn't ultimately matter that much. The only thing that matters is like when you put it out on the market, does it work or does it not work? Do people like it? Do they not like it? That's the real truth. And I'm always after that. Anyway, that's, I know this is a unique or different point of view on these things, but I'm just sharing what we're doing here. And I want to also be very clear, like everything I'm saying here, please don't take it as like, what I'm saying is right or wrong. It's just like, it's a way, it's what works for us. And every company should figure out what works for them, you know? Yeah.
It's amazing to hear different perspectives. So it's crazy, interesting to hear that from you.
Yeah. It also goes back to what we talked about, like, how do you find success? Because, well, if the way was good, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, yeah, like, look, we're still in business 22 years later. Could our business be 5x bigger? I'm sure it could. But does that mean it's a failure? Like, I mean, like, how do you, it's not, of course, we've been very successful, you know, so it just depends on how you look at things. Like, I've never been but we don't have goals. We don't have revenue targets. We don't have any targets. We don't have OKRs or KPIs. We just build the stuff that we think is great. We improve it as much as we possibly can. And at the end of the year, we can, like, do we make more money than we spend? If we did, we're good. We're still around. You know, that's what it comes down to. Not did we maximize our revenue, not did we make as much money as we could, not did we sign up as much people as we could or as many customers as we could. Like, do we sign up enough? Did we make enough? Do we make more than we spent? We're good. And that's ultimately how we like to run things.
It's a real breath of fresh air to hear.
Yeah, it takes a load out of you.
It does.
So one question for Rose T, I don't know how it's spelled. If a team is attempting like a low hierarchy, like you are, how do you handle decision-making conflicts in your like organization?
Yes. Okay. I see this one. Yeah. Kind of depends. What we tend to do is, you know, we'll often trade disagreements. So one way to think about this is, let's say like, I'll just use David and I as an example, my business partner. We're just disagreeing over something, some feature in a product or some way we're doing it or whatever it might be. We'll argue, and then it will be pretty clear like who wants it more. And they get it. And then the deal is,
she wants like, it more.
Okay. And the deal is like, you get this one, I get the next one. Like you go out for lunch with friends and it's like, I got this one, you get the next one. Like, you're never really keeping track, but it's like, you can tell because, you know, and some of these can be really serious debates and disagreements, but like, you can ultimately pull rank. I mean, like, look, I own the majority. I can just make every decision. That's not fun for me or for anyone. Like, that's not how we do it, right? So typically, for example, when you have fewer people on a team, so we have these 2-person teams primarily, it's more of a conversation then. It's 2 people talking back and forth, and you can kind of usually come to a decision together, or it's clear that one person wants it more than the other or whatever, and you just kind of work it out. When you have 7 people on a team or 12 people on a team, and there's 6 different opinions and you're battling and factions form, it's very difficult to reach agreement in that. So I think smaller groups actually have a much easier job and easier time at doing that. But the other thing is we rarely make critical decisions. Like, we work 6 weeks at a time. We're not betting on something that's going to take 4 years to do. Like, when you're betting on something that's going to take 4 years to do, it's like a serious decision, because if you get that wrong, it's like a big problem. Mm-hmm. If you're working on something that's kind of wrong and it takes a few weeks to do, and someone made the wrong call, like, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, we do make some critical decisions from time to time. Obviously, every company does, but we try not to make things critical that aren't really that important. So that's another way to reduce conflict, is to reduce the level of criticality of individual decisions in the first place, to the point where you're like, either way is probably kind of okay. Or, you know what, let's try this time this way, and next time you get the next one. That's how we do it.
Awesome.
I love that. Yeah. There's a bunch, yeah. But there's like from Bayan about marketing. How do you do marketing? What's your approach to marketing? And there's like, I want to add my bit here is like, you're very prominent on social media. You have a lot of followers and the books and everything. So how does that all fit in like your marketing approach?
Yeah, that's the primary avenue or channel. We don't really haven't spent money on marketing. We don't have a marketing person right now. There's no ads. You won't find a single Basecamp ad anywhere, or Hey ad. We don't buy ads and traditional ads, or we don't buy digital ads. We've experimented with that over the years a little bit, but it doesn't really work actually. And you end up blowing a lot of money on, and it doesn't work for us. And our prices are low. So it's like, it's hard to really make it work. And the keywords anyway. So we just share. We do things like this. We write books. We talk openly about our point of view. We're very opinionated. And people talk about that. And we've also been doing it for 20 years, and so you just do it enough and people hear about you. And then all of our growth is organic. All of it's word of mouth. Customers use our products. They love the products. They tell someone else about the product. They tell someone else about the product. Or with Basecamp, people don't use it alone. They use it with a team, or they use it with other people. Or they use it with clients, and the client's like, oh my God, I've been looking for this thing my whole life. Like, let me sign up for this next. And so it kind of grows that way. And then plus on the top layers, David and I are just outspoken, and we share a lot, and we teach a lot, and we open source a ton of software. We give a lot back to the industry. And all of those things I think help build a reputation. And then people, want to trust you, or want to give you a chance, or they want to look at your product and they want to try it out. And that's how we've always done it. I think we do like to experiment. So we have done some little marketing stunts or campaigns here and there, but for the most part, like over the past 22 years, we've spent, I'd say, less than $1 million on marketing. Now, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're thinking about doing like a little commercial video thing, and like, we might do it. I don't know if we're going to do it or not, but that could cost in itself like $500,000 to do well. And so like, that might be something we decide to bet on. We're like, well, let's try it. I don't know. Let's see what happens with that. That's like, because if there's something fun about it, there's something exciting about it, we might try that. I don't know.
Super Bowl?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but mostly it's just sharing, actually. It's just sharing. Yeah. And it takes a long time.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Did that work for Hey? Like that's like, it's about like you speaking up if they do want to try this, and that's just viral with?
Yeah, well, Hey was interesting. Hey blew up way bigger than we ever thought it would. It's faster than we ever thought it would. So in the first year, we got about close to, I don't know, a little bit under 40,000 paying subscribers for an email thing, which is normally free. People use Gmail, it's free. That took off. We did do a really good job, I think, leading up to it by teasing it. I wrote this like letter. If you go to hey.com, you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see this letter. That was the letter that was just there at hey.com for like 2 months. And it's like, what are they doing? What is this thing? What is this about? And then you kind of slowly share some ideas, some more features and some things. And then I did a 37-minute walkthrough video. So most product demos are what, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. I did a 37-minute video, which seems like the wrong thing to do. But with it, I mean, it's been viewed a few 100,000 times. And it was one of the big differentiators. And I walked through the product, shared the philosophy, explained every feature and why it's there, and talked about the frustrations I've had with email and how this solves it. And that was another approach that we took that was different from everybody else. All those things together, and the product itself, I think, and the fact that you get an @hey.com email address, and someone sends you an email and their email address is, jason@hey.com. It's like, what's hey.com? And you click that and you look at it. So all those things together, I think, worked really well to launch the product.
Amazing.
That's real honest.
So
yeah. Also, last thing I'll say about this, luck and timing are the number 2 or top 2 things that you need. And you can't do anything about them. I think you asked me this question in the beginning, which was, maybe it was off camera, I forget, like, could we do Basecamp again, or would we launch it the same way again? If we launch Basecamp today for the first time, I don't think it'd be as successful as it is, because it was a product of a different time. In 2004 was very early. And now Basecamp is a huge, we're launching new versions now, but if we were to put it out on the market fresh, I think it would be a lot harder today. And we were a product of the moment, of the time. We did it a certain way. As a company, we were an unusual company. All those things added up, but also it was luck, luck and timing. And that goes all the way back to, when you were born and where you were born and who you were born to and all the opportunities that you had. I mean, who knows? All you can do is make the best of what you've got and see what happens.
And the people.
Of course, the team, of course, the team you hire, of course. But I actually feel lucky. That's part of it, actually. I feel lucky to be able to hire anyone I get to hire. I feel lucky to even have had a chance to hire them and have them have interest in the company. And so it's all, I should have mentioned that, but it's like, to me, it's all wrapped up in that too, that we're lucky we have the team we have. We're lucky to have such great people here. Yeah, there's some skill in finding the right people and hiring the right people, but it's still a lot of luck that people come into your life in that way. So yeah, but of course the team's huge, of course. Yeah.
Well, Jason, I think that we can't take more of your time.
Although we want to.
Look, I'm happy to, if you want, I'm happy to spend 15 more minutes. I've got something
right
after that.
So,
I've got something right after that I have to break for. So let's, if people want to stick around.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So,
okay, I would like to know something. What do you think about, let's say, you said you make no strategy. What do you think about, let's say, design strategy in, let's say, in companies?
Yeah, let me clarify that a little bit. We have an overarching strategy, which is like, first of all, build what we think should exist in the world. Make sure there's fun in the product. Leave people with a sense of a little bit of awe and wonder when they use something for the first time, that this is different. Like, we have some general feel for how we want to build the things we want to build. We want to build things that can only be built here. Like, we want to put ourselves into the product and whatnot. So we have strategy, and there's like some longer term strategy for the most part, but it's mostly what we decide to do specifically is decided at 6 weeks at a time. Right. But we have a like, for example, Hey needs a calendar, and that's something we know we're going to do. I don't know when we're going to do it. I have some ideas on what it could do, how it could be different, but I don't know when we're going to do it. So strategically, we know we want to add a calendar to Hey at some point. I just don't know when. So it's not like we plotted this out like 8 months from now we'll do this. No, we only think 6 weeks at a time, and not 6 weeks and then the next 6 weeks. We only think about the next 6 weeks.
Wow.
So I don't know anything about what we're going to do 6 weeks from that. We'll figure it out as we go. And if you have to come up with it, why not come up with it closer to the time you need it? Because then you'll have more information about it, rather than trying to plan out 7 6-week cycles from now. Like, who knows what the world's going to look like then and what's going to be going on. So I do think design strategy in terms of like how you approach things is important. What your values are in terms of design. Some companies are all about everything needs to be really high fidelity. Other companies are like, some things can be really, really good and other things can be kind of not so good. Some people are, it just depends. I don't know even, I don't know how to approach it other than like, you've got to know your company has a personality, your design has a personality. You need to know what it is. You need to know what your own personality is. I think if you want to know yourself and know your design and know your team, you got to kind of have a sense of what you're good at, what you want to be and what you want to do. And those things should be in your head. I think you should have a good sense of that. But I don't know what else I would do in terms of strategy. For example, Hey and Basecamp look very different. They behave very differently. They don't appear to be from the same company. And I'm totally fine with that because the products have their own personality too. Now, as we build Basecamp 4, we're going to bring a little bit more of Hey's ethos into Basecamp 4, Hey's feel, Hey's spirit into Basecamp 4, which is one of the advantages of having two products is you can kind of play them off each other. But Basecamp will still be its own thing, but it might look a little bit more like Hey moving forward. We'll see.
Are there separate teams like Hey and Basecamp, like totally separate teams? Or they so they don't sit together, but it's like
Yeah, no. So we have one company, and everyone works on everything. So no one's dedicated just to Hey or dedicated just to Basecamp. People move back and forth between products. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
the,
'cause-
and the context switching, like, is it like for the 6 weeks you're in that context and then the 6 weeks?
Yes. So you wouldn't. Yes. So you wouldn't do. And by the way, not every feature takes 6 weeks. Some take a week. Some take 2 weeks. When I say 6 weeks, nothing can take longer than 6 weeks. But yeah, when you're assigned a certain set of projects for this next cycle, that's all your responsibility is those things. And you wouldn't likely do some Hey features and some Basecamp features. You like for that cycle, you'd be on Hey, or that cycle you'd be on Basecamp. Because I think context switching between products within a cycle is too much mental switching. So we want you to stay in the same code base for those 6 weeks. And that's kind of how that'll work.
And do the teams ever, because like you keep on saying it's like a 2-person team, and like as a designer, do they talk to each other? Do they get ideas off of each other? Like how does that work for them? Like in because I was talking to them about it, like you need another person to bounce your ideas off of, and that's
Yes.
great. You have the programmer, which is one person, but you also want to talk to another designer because there's something that the programmer, you can't really bounce things off of.
Totally.
So,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So the design team will bounce things off each other all the time. When I say a 2-person team, I mean there's 2 people responsible ultimately for building a specific feature. But each person, you can imagine branches like behind, there could be 3 or 4 people standing behind them, not standing looking over the shoulder, but like as resources for them to ask questions. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? There's a lot of that goes on. So there's a lot of collaboration that happens, or advice that happens, or hey, what do you think of this kind of stuff that happens outside of that small unit. But it's those 2 people who are doing the work to actually build the thing. So yeah, there's a lot of bouncing ideas off each other.
Yeah.
There's one question I just saw which I want to answer. This because this is a business model one. Sean asks, how have you handled it where very large Basecamp clients have threatened to quit if they don't build what they want? Is that the so this is a business model thing. I don't care how big your company is. It means nothing to me. Because you only pay, everyone pays us the same amount. Everyone pays us $99 a month for Basecamp. We don't charge per person. We don't charge per seat. So if you use Basecamp, it's $99 per month flat. You can have 1,000 people using it. You can have 2 people using it, which means that I'm not beholden to you because you pay me more. You can't pay me more. And I don't care how big you are and how powerful you are. You pay me $100 a month. So does a company with 1 person or 2. I'm out here for the customer base as a whole, not for someone who pays me more than anyone else. So we've prevented anyone from domineering our business model, or dominating our business model. The problem when you charge per seat for big companies is that you end up working, to your point, Sean, you end up working for them. If someone's paying you $160,000 a month and everyone else is paying you $800 a month or $200 a month, like you work for the company that's paying you 160, whatever I said, $1,000. Now you're a consulting firm. Now you work for them, and now you're afraid. So what's important to us is that you can never have a customer that you cannot afford to lose. So we never want to have someone we can't afford to lose. Now, we don't want to lose customers, of course, but people leave for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes someone else comes in and takes over a department and they want to bring the tool they've been using for the last 5 years, regardless of how well your tool's using or been working in the company before they came. They want to bring their own stuff. Totally understand that. I don't want to be beholden to all sorts of externalities that could sink our business because a customer leaves. I don't want to do that. So the answer is, if you threaten to quit because we don't build something that you want, like if you need that, then you're gonna have to look somewhere else for it, or like maybe it's a great idea, maybe we will build it, but it's not about how much you pay us. You can't pay us more than anybody else.
I don't think there's an equivalent. Like I never heard about that. Like I didn't know that.
Yeah, not many companies do it this way because companies can make a lot more money if they charge per seat.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I don't care. Like I don't want the downside that comes with it. So sometimes you think like more money means better. No, it can also mean like much worse. It can mean now you're beholden to a certain group and they're driving your product direction. You don't really want to do that, but you can't afford to lose them. So you start to do things you don't want to do now. And now you're essentially working for them. Your whole company is working for them, and you're actually not even paying you enough really for that to happen. And you end up doing things you don't want, and that's just not worth it. It's not worth it. So that's our take.
Very inspiring.
Yeah, I think that's a great note to end. And I think it takes me to a different thought path. I love that. It changes things. Yeah.
I'm trying to find here. Let me send you this post. This is an old post. I'll put this in the chat. This is an old post that I wrote about this point. It's like really old. I'll repost it to my Hey World thing shortly. About this idea that you want what we call a static business. So read that article when you get a chance.
Will do.
Yeah.
Yes,
do, sir.
sure.
Well, Jason, that was super refreshing. I think every single question had an original answer, an original perspective, and that's really special. It doesn't happen often. So I want to thank you.
I got one question from the crowd asking if you will come to Tel Aviv and be a guest here.
I'd love to. I've never been to Israel. As I was telling you earlier, my good cousin lives in Israel. He's asked me to, and I have some friends who I grew up with who moved to Israel. So I'd love to at some point. I just have never been. But Tel Aviv would be the city I would absolutely visit. So if I do that, I'll get in touch.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
bye.